Hello, and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion, a podcast where we seek to explore different ideas, cultures, peoples, and events. So today, given the circumstances happening around the world with the coronavirus, or COVID-19, I thought it would be an interesting idea to talk with some members of my immediate family about how this has affected them, and from that, how the effects are both similar and different. Plus, I think this is a good addition to discussing how this has affected me individually, but I think it's more important to see how your family and those around you are affected and see what similarities and differences there are. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce some people on this podcast. So,
hi, this is Wendy. I am Sean's aunt, his favorite aunt. Doug?
Hi, I'm Doug Sin, and I'm the boss man.
We're being serious for a second. This is not...
I'm Jerry Mockler, and I'm Sean's grandmother.
alrighty, well guys, it's great to have you on here today. So to begin with, let's just kind of briefly talk about how individually this has affected you and some basic information about what you think, how has it affected you, to what extent, and whether it's really that big of a deal for you or not. So Jerry, if you want to start, how about you go first?
Well, how it affects me is, personally, I'm frightened. I'm in that age group that isn't very good for me. And I'm afraid for my children, and I'm afraid for my mother who's in a nursing home.
Okay, so you're personally afraid and you're worried about your family, which I am too, but also, given your age group, that is also a factor as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I think that you may bring up a great point. A lot of senior citizens and people who have, current health conditions or pre-existing conditions, I know, like with you with your asthma, that's a big concern, and that's why I think it's been very smart of you not to go out or do any running around unless you absolutely have to. So, no, I completely agree. And Wendy, how about yourself?
Well, I find it a challenge working because you're working from home. You don't have a printer, you don't have a scanner, you don't have the interaction with your fellow teammates. So to try and get a project done has been a very, very challenging task. As a matter of fact, you don't get things done. You can't get your hands on things that you need in order to get your job done. And then, let's say you go out to go grocery shopping or do something, and people aren't doing the social distancing. I was at a store the other day, and they have it taped out 6 feet, and the guy behind me was not even paying attention to that. He was so close to me that I had to turn around and give him a look like, stop. He had no mask, no gloves. He was on the phone, and he was almost ramming his cart into the back of me.
Yeah, but I think Jesus is going to save him.
Mom.
Nobody asked.
Mother.
And Uncle Doug, what about you?
Well, let me just say this, that it really, I don't mind working at home. It's okay. I miss sports, and I miss golf, and I miss fishing, and I miss that. Other than that, I get to be around my wife more, which is good.
Gag me.
Which is good. I get to work outside, which is good. However, I miss playing golf.
Again, social interaction. It is a social interaction that I think most people are missing, because aren't we all social creatures?
Yeah, humans are social creatures.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Golf has got nothing to do with society.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with being social.
No.
I miss seeing my mother and visiting personally with my mother. And because she's in a nursing home, she's quarantined and nobody can go in. And it's pretty sad. It's upsetting.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's affecting us differently based on our living circumstances. Because, like, myself and you, Jerry, we live alone, whereas Wendy and Doug, they live together. So that definitely can affect the dynamic of being stuck at home, or being at home for a prolonged period of time. So I definitely.
You don't have to be stuck at home. You can take a walk outside. You can walk around. Keep your social distance.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can do a lot of that, and that's very true. We're not like in a tight quarantine where we can't leave our houses here, say, but most of the time we are spending time in our household, and we are going out. Like, I go jogging, I go out for a run, or just go for a drive to get out of the house, but we're still more isolated, and much more isolated than normal, either individually if you live alone, or like you two means at home. But I think overall that everyone is being affected differently, and I think some people, they're adapting well, and others are not adapting nearly as well.
I mean, I know every couple days I have to get out of the house. I have to go. Like, it's a must, because it's like...
I agree. Just jump in the car and just go for a ride around town and then come back. And then it's like...
that I haven't been that good. I've been like I went flower shopping yesterday. I mean, I went to a nursery, and I went to Home Depot, and I'm not being as self-quarantined as I should, and it's not good. But it's
it's not. It's not.
It's not. It's that being held back and not being able to have your life. That's very hard, because it's spring, right? And you want to get out, you want to get your yard going, you want to get things done. And it's like, I feel like someone else has held back my life. It's not me holding back my life.
It's the invisible enemy.
Well, but it's frustrating that something else has this much control over your life. I mean, it's not like I went out and intentionally brought the coronavirus here. It came to us.
Yeah, but one of the good things is that if we weren't doing what we're doing now, we wouldn't be getting 24 uncooked crab cakes delivered tomorrow.
As you all can see, family is always fun, and we always have an interesting time when we're together. But that makes it more interesting and always fun. But no, but yeah.
That point of, this has been thrown on us. This has been thrown in our faces, in our lives, and it's like, it's hard to deal with it. It's like, how dare you do this to my life when I'm used to being an American citizen and run around, do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it.
But you're doing it on your own. I mean, if you didn't want to do it, you could go out and do whatever you want. It's not a mandatory stay at home. It's a stay at home.
And I think the important thing
Michigan is like overreacting.
Ooh, the protests.
And no, not the protests, but the governor of Michigan is totally told you can't even go fishing. And how's fishing going to keep you from anything? I mean, fishing. It's fishing. You can't. If you go to the store, you can't buy grass seed. You can't buy corn and plant it in your garden. That's ridiculous.
Well, I think one thing is, like, one of my good friends, he works at Lowe's, and they've been telling customers, if you need something for your house or you need essential materials for something, please come in and get them, but don't just come in to browse for the sake of browsing, because it's a hazard. And they've posted signs and other things to tell customers this, but every day he encounters people who just come there, walk around and do nothing, and he's kind of like, people, I know you want to get out of the house, but if you don't, maybe go do this in a park or something, somewhere where you're not in an enclosed area. So, and back to your point, Uncle Doug, about kind of how strict it is versus how not strict it is, I think that everyone kind of is basing that on their own decision and their own discretion. But I also...
It's really a state thing. And some of these governors are like overreacting to some of the things that are going on. Like you look at Michigan and what they did, and then now you look at South Dakota, what she didn't do, and then you look at Alaska, what they did, and they're going to open up their economy.
Alaska's going to open up their economy?
Yes, they are.
Well, that's another interesting thing, is to seeing the differences between the states and how they're reacting or not reacting, where you have like almost a total lack of action versus a lot of action. Like Illinois was one of the first states that actually put the stay-at-home order into effect, whereas Missouri just happened very recently. So
right.
I think that there needs to be a balance.
And what the problem with Illinois is, Chicago. Chicago is where all your people are sick and all your people are dying. They're not dying in central Illinois. Probably not even, you might have a few in Edwardsville, but that's pretty much Chicago. And that's because it's almost like a New York.
Yeah, well, as of a week ago, the number in our county was about 47 infected, but I'm sure the number has risen since last Friday. But, but no, you're right. Most of the cases are in Chicago because that's the most densely populated part of the state.
I want to say a note about how many people are infected. We don't really know because there isn't enough testing going on. And if you're going to open up your state, by God, you better know who's sick and who isn't, because you're going to start this all over again and you're going to kill more of our citizens.
Phase one in Donald Trump's plan, it's all phase one. That you can open up, but you have to be able to determine who's sick and who isn't, and if they are sick, what do you do?
But doesn't that go back to everybody having the tests? I mean,
it does.
There's not enough
but
tests.
I mean, you got to have 350 million tests. Now, where are you going to get
You're being a little dramatic
No,
there,
no.
but you have to do this state. But if you're going to say that we're going to open up a state, then you guys they have to start by counties. They should probably start with the least affected counties. Start small, go big. I don't know.
It still comes down.
I think it's a gamble. If you just open it up and people start congregating, and it's going to happen all over again. It's going to.
But that's what has happened.
It's not happening.
Well, I mean, one good example is in Seattle. Like my good friend Eric, he lives in Seattle.
One thing of getting the economy back.
Sean just started talking.
And my one friend is in Seattle, and he said that was working pretty well until they had a good weekend about a month ago, and everyone disregarded the rules and regulations. They went out, mingled, and that's when it really blew up in Seattle. I mean, give or take a week or so of etc. But I do think that there needs to be a balance. Like, yeah, if the appropriate protocols and information is in place, you can start to open up and do things incrementally. But if you still don't have a complete grasp of what's going on, then I think the safe bet is to have a stay-at-home order. People can still go out and do essential things, but they should be take precautions. Gloves, hand sanitizer, masks, etc. So I think it's like all things in moderation. Just keep have a balanced approach and holistic approach.
I think the problem is there are too many people that don't follow the rules, and they're the ones that are making it unsafe for other people.
No, I completely agree. I think that one part of this is the kind of the lack of a coherent response across all the states, but the other problem is people not following the rules or not following the precautions that have proven to slow this virus down. And for our family, I know we've been pretty good at this, and thank God that we've not had any issues thus far because we're still doing what we can to stay safe. But I've heard horror stories about people who don't, and it. At the end of the day, it's just I think a lot of people think this is kind of treading on their freedom and freedom of what they can and can't do. Which, it is, but you have to understand that it's not like this is not a human-based threat. This is a virus. It's a biological threat. Or, it's a pathogen, and you have to understand, okay, maybe in order to resolve this, perhaps I should just reduce what I normally do and don't look at it as, it's eroding my freedoms and everything. But that's a fine line because you can argue both sides of the coin, and that's a slippery slope as well.
Well, I'm going to argue the coin here. How did it, I mean, are we going to say how the virus got started? Are you going to say it was from exotic animals? No. We know what started this. We know how it started and where it started. There's the frustration.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that there's a lot of people who are even debating that. There's so much debate going on at so many different levels, not just in the U.S., but around the world. And that is further miring the situation. And, I don't want to really get into any politics on this podcast, but that is a big factor between countries, between states, between groups, between parties. Those are all things that you're seeing being manifested right now, and that's influencing the response time, the actions, and unfortunately, that's contributing to the death toll globally, and especially here in the U.S. lately. So it's not one group or individual's fault here, say. It's kind of, I think the main thing is it's showing that there needs to be more collaboration and more cooperation.
I agree.
I agree with that. I mean, it's too late now. The cat is out of the bag. You got to go forward and you got to deal with what's going on now. And putting the blame on somebody,
Yeah,
I don't know that that's doing people any good.
Exactly. Everyone is playing the blame game. Well, okay, we can blame, but how about we actually have some objective criticism and actually figure out how to resolve it? We can't stop it. What's happened. It's in the past. We can't change it. Let's all focus on a solution to this problem.
Right. I think Governor Cuomo is doing one heck of a job.
He has, and his brother had coronavirus.
And he survived it. What I think is sad is that these cities have to bid for their personal safety devices, and there aren't enough masks. What is going on in this country? I never thought I'd see this, ever. That we would always be prepared.
You expect the United States of America to know that they're going to need 30 million N95 masks.
That are only 95% effective.
Though nobody knew that. How did anybody know that they're going to need more than 40,000 ventilators? Nobody knew that. Nobody knew.
No, I think you both have good points. It's like there could have been more. There could have been more preparation, but at the same time, there's no way to know the scale of how this will happen because there's been AIDS, there's been SARS, there's been MERS, there's been other and then just the flu. There's been many other pathogens that have manifested, but nothing like this since I would say the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919 in terms of its ferocity.
And then there was polio.
Oh, before that, yeah, that is true. Polio
was something, but it didn't affect hundreds of thousands of people.
I thought polio did affect that many. I thought polio was
I know Roosevelt had it, but other than that.
I mean, polio was a scourge for a long time, but I think the one thing that makes this that much more terrifying is just the rate at which it spreads. Thank God it's not it does not have the same mortality rate as many other diseases like Ebola or MERS.
Just like that, we know that flu kills about 100,000 people, just regular flu, 100,000 plus every year. We know that. And we don't even know how many people actually have the flu and don't die from it.
No,
we have those stats. We're studying this virus more than any virus we've ever had because this virus, the basic problem with this virus is it's deadly.
Yeah.
This one here, if you get it and you're not taken care of, you're dead.
Well, and that's
how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter. It does matter your health. If you're in good health, you're not going to be fine, but you'll probably come through.
Yeah, and that's the one benefit, or at least one positive aspect, is that most people who do get it will survive. But depending on a wide range of factors, sometimes it will. A lot of people who are in good shape, they do perish from it, but others don't. So I think because it's new, it's unknown, and there's so many X factors. That's what really causing the panic. I mean, the flu, it's insidious, it's bad, it kills a lot of people, but it's a known enemy and people, are used to the idea of the flu. Whereas this just came out of the blue.
Right, and that's the thing. We have a flu vaccine. I mean, everybody gets their flu shot at the beginning of the season. There's nothing for this.
Yeah, and that is this. And I think that plays a lot into the pandemonium and the uncertainty and the anxiety people are facing. All these factors are at play. So I completely agree. Yeah.
The anxiety for me is that we have a president who says one thing one day and says something different another day.
I thought we were into politics, because if you want to talk about politics, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get into politics, but that could be a good topic for another podcast. I want to stay focused more on the actual virus itself, but there's definitely a lot of political aspects that are affecting this. I totally agree with both of you.
Nancy Pelosi and Shermer.
Okay, so I work with a lady whose best friend is a medical doctor. She intubates people. That is her job. She's an MD. She had to take a 30% cut in pay and has contracted the coronavirus. So they say, because she has lost her sense of smell and her sense of taste. But they won't test her because she has the symptoms. Does that make sense?
No, that doesn't make sense.
So she has to leave work for 2 weeks, take the 30% cut in pay, and she potentially has the coronavirus. And they don't know if her sense of smell or sense of taste is going to come.
I thought that was considered one of the signs now.
There's so many variables. Everybody's affected. Like, you listen to Rand Paul.
Oh dear God!
He had it, but he had no symptoms. You talk to another person, they get it, and they got to go be put into a coma and given a ventilator, and they're on death's doorstep, and then all of a sudden they survive.
But I mean, you're taking what I was saying is you have someone in the medical profession, and they are trying to save these people. And she was saying that she's not allowed proper masks. She said she's out in the hallway and there's someone gasping for air, and she has to hurry up and suit up to go in and try to save somebody's life. On a personal and on a professional level, it's very difficult because your job is to save somebody's life, and you're trying to keep yourself safe, and you're not even given the equipment to keep yourself safe. But they want her, but they're not have it. Right. But her point is we're on the front lines trying to save people's lives.
They're heroes.
And we're getting our pay cut, but yet we're not given the PPEs that are required to do our jobs. And that's scary because the poor woman is in there. I mean, she's tubing these people. Of course, she's in their face. She's going to get sick. But yet they don't give her the proper...
They may not have the stuff. I mean, no country was prepared for this type of virus.
Right.
No.
And this person is in Pennsylvania.
And this could be when we come out of this, the new normal, as they say, that we will be prepared for something like this again, because it's going to happen again. In the future, it will happen again. Maybe not in my lifetime. Maybe in Sean's lifetime, it might happen again, but not in mine.
No, well, history has shown that these things will never go away. It's just it's not a matter of if, it's when. Like, like I said, the last equivalent in terms of, I think, of its spreading was the Spanish flu, and that was a little more than a century ago.
Yep.
So this could be like a once in a century, once in half a century. But I think the last big crisis was AIDS back in the late 70s and 80s, but that's still different than this because AIDS did not spread like this.
The other thing, Ebola.
There was SARS. There was MERS.
Yeah.
That H1N1 that really turned out to be nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think because we've had a string of situations that have been bad, but they've always been contained. They've not grown out of proportion. Oh, okay, these things happen. They'll get taken care of. This one slipped the net, and now we're seeing what happens. So I think it's very important that the international community realizes that they need to have at least somewhere stored safe and sound a reaction plan, and they cannot forget the lessons that they're suffering from this now. So I think that's, as they say, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. So, I think it's just very important that we take all the mental notes from this, save them, and make sure we preserve them so in case this does happen again, and when it does happen again, God knows what it will be, we have at least something to take it on in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, we have very smart scientists. They're working on a vaccine or a flu shot, or maybe it'll be called a coronavirus shot. It's going to happen. I mean, it will happen, and we will have this available to anybody who wants it, just like we do now for the regular flu. Every year you get a flu shot. So now you're going to get a flu shot and a coronavirus.
Yeah, but you have to wonder, how is this going to mutate? How is this virus going to mutate into something? I mean, that's another story.
That's why the
virus mutates.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying it's scary to think of.
Just like when you spray ants with bug spray, you kill them all except for one, and he mutates, and then he becomes a super ant, and you can't kill him.
And that's the thing about viruses that is quite horrifying, is the fact that the rate in which they mutate and adapt. So, even with the flu shot, they have to constantly update that every year to deal with the new strains of flu. So it's something that people have to understand is not a one-off. It's every year, every season, or whatever the lifespan of the pathogen you're dealing with. You have to keep track with its mutation and the changes within its genetic structure. So, very good. All right. So now we've talked a little bit about this. So what about? Let's move on and talk about what do you think will happen, or what are your thoughts, predictions in the next few months or the foreseeable future with this? And Jerry, how about we start with you?
Well, if we don't get enough tests, as I said a little bit ago, if we start going out, it's going to come back. And until they can test us and get a serum to protect us, it's going to be a real crapshoot. I don't know that I feel safe going out without a mask and gloves. And I can't see this changing. I think this will still be going on this summer.
Okay. And Wendy, what about you?
I agree with Mom that this will still be going on in the summer. I will still be wearing my mask and my gloves, and I'll still be keeping my social distance. Even when they tell me I don't have to, I still think I'm going to be one of those people out there with her gloves and mask on, just out of sheer fear, because people are going to start congregating, and I think it's going to just, they're going to have another wave of it, we know what's going to happen, because didn't it happen with the Spanish flu? Because didn't it kind of die down?
It died out, but it came back in the winter, but then they controlled it.
Yeah. So, and then so normal life. I mean, this is going to become our new normal, is social distancing. Only 20 of us in the grocery store at a time, maybe 6 of us. I mean, what about when we go back to work? I mean, how are you going to social distance at work? You can't.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that's a good point, because I know, like, where I work, before this really hit, we started like rotating in and out of the office. So only one person in our department would be in the office, then everyone would work at home, and then they would rotate. So maybe once or twice a week you'd be in the office. But now, since it got worse, as of the 20th of March in Illinois, we all started working from home. Regardless, of what our jobs and what we had to do. Now, that's the Illinois stay-at-home order is supposed to end on April 30th, but I'm sure they're going to extend it longer, because there's been notes and information that's being sent out that is kind of highlighting this or hinting this. Yeah. And Uncle Doug, what about you? What are your thoughts, expectations?
I have a little more rosier opinion about all this, and within about 2 weeks or so, I think there's going to be more and more testing. We're producing it. Don't be shaking your head, Jerry. That is not nice. I listen to you. Now you have to listen to me. That's a Democrat vote.
Hey, you married one.
Family, you gotta love them, right?
And,
Finish your thought.
excuse me.
I said, come on, finish your thought.
I'm gonna walk out of here.
Uncle Doug, you never cease to amaze.
All right, so Doug, you said there's going to be testing. It's going to be available.
There will be more and more testing done, and it'll be all good. The states will be testing their people. They will open up their states as they feel is appropriate, and if it doesn't, they'll close it back down. They will not allow the health thing to become the big issue that it is right now. There are states now that can open up probably tomorrow because they don't have issues, and they have testing, and they have the hospital space to take care of the people. You look at New York, they wanted all this beds, all this equipment, the ventilators. They didn't need it. They did need masks. They did need gloves. They did need gowns. That's all going to get supplied. There's not going to be a shortage of that soon.
Doug, wait a minute. In the beginning, there was a shortage.
And I'm not going to argue that point. There was, but there won't be in the future. And as we are moving to the future, we are not going backwards. We're going to the future. In the future, we will have everything that we need to allow the country to get back to normal or new normal or whatever you want to call it. It's going to happen. And within a year, I'm going to say maybe less than a year, we're going to have like a shot that everybody can have, and it's not going to be an issue. We have the smartest scientists.
I hope you're right.
Working.
I hope you're right.
I
want that really bad.
Keep their equipment going. I work for these people. They are very smart. They don't have any common sense, but they're smart.
Like the woman in her chair.
And they will find a solution. And we will be able to go to a bar with 50 people in it and have a beer. Or we will be able to go to a sporting event and watch a football game or a baseball game or a soccer game. It is going to happen.
No, I think you're right, and I think it's just a matter of how long. The question is not if, it's just when. And we have a lot of good minds, a lot of good scientists, organizations, and not just in the U.S. but around the world that are tackling this.
It'll be a year before, probably end of the year. It's going to be towards the end of the year. They're going to have like a regular old coronavirus shot. It's going to happen by the end of the year. Now, are we going to have to stay home for a whole nother year? No. We're going to be able to go out. You may want to be cautious about how you participate. You may not even want to shake somebody's hand anymore. I mean, that's very possible. Shaking hands has never been a clean thing to do. It's always been transferring germs no matter what.
No, that's a very good point, and I do think that I don't think the stay-at-home orders or whatever you want to call or whatever is being put in place will continue for a huge period of time. But I do think that people should stay cautious even after this has initially passed, as you were saying, Jerry, because the risk of a relapse is still high, and these things have to work their way through the planet, bit by bit. China got hit. Then you had other countries were getting hit. So it's going to work its way through. And what sometimes happens is once it's gone through one area, it's been long enough, it can actually come back. So I think that the global community has to be proactive and work together to try to get this thing to phase itself out. Because that's the one plus with the virus is that they do work themselves out of existence because just of the by nature of their reproductive cycle and how they spread.
But to your point, globally, everybody has to work together, and there's a catch right there.
Exactly, and the political divisions and all the other aspects of, internal dynamics, country, power politics, all these other things will play into this. And I would say a lot of it is positive, but there's also a lot of negatives with that.
Right. I mean, you're always going to have these countries that are going to be doing stuff. There's no regulation that they put out there. And I'm not going to say it happened in their lab, but I am going to say that it's very possible it did happen. And they were slack. One guy got infected and infected the entire world. So there you have it. So but you can't police every country in the world.
No, and even with organizations like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, they don't have the power or the abilities to do that. And and like you're saying, that is one possibility of where this virus came from. It's possible, but I still think it will be some time before we can pinpoint without reason of a doubt where this actually came from, or how it got into the mainstream population and spread from there. We know what we know thus far with the information that's been released, but I think it'll be very interesting once they do pinpoint a source for this virus. That will be very interesting to see once they do have a pretty good idea about it.
I don't know how true it is about all the scientists in China that they got arrested and nobody ever heard from them again. I don't know if that's all true or not, but I would believe it if they said it happened. Because the Chinese government isn't going to allow itself to be put into a position to where they're going to look like.
And Uncle Doug, you do have a good point. Having lived in China myself for several years, and living in that society, we have to separate the government from the people, as with any country. But that is the one thing the Chinese government cares about more than almost anything else is its image. So anything that will damage its image or lower their prestige, that would be something that I would not fully expect them to be upfront about just because of that. I'm not saying they won't be, but that is because they care about that, they don't want to tarnish that, and that is something they maintain very vigorously.
Right, and the second problem is they're the second largest economy in the world, and nobody's going to go up against them no matter what. Even the United States has to back off because, they're talking about serums that they have now to help people, and guess where all the little chemicals to make these serums are coming from? Guess where?
China.
Yeah, exactly. So how are you gonna hold China accountable for everything they do? Because all China's got to say is we're not going to sell you the chemicals.
But China would never do that because
you don't know. You don't know that.
There is a certain level of interdependence.
I agree with Wendy. I don't think China's going to cut off their nose to spite their face. They need the money.
They do.
They don't need money.
They need to be on everybody's good side. They need to be on Russia's good side, our good side, the UK's good side.
I don't like it.
I think all of you have good points on that, and I think it's just a matter of how much in each category that will be done. This virus has shown the pitfalls every country is having right now in their response time and everything. In a nutshell, China has been pretty proactive in trying to reduce it. Their initial response time was quite negative, trying to cover it up, which I think really has, exacerbated this. But their follow-up was a little better, but it still doesn't hide the fact they tried to cover it up. That's common knowledge. Whereas in the U.S., in retrospect, we can always say, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. But I do think that there could have been at least some more preparation made while it was blowing up in China, just to prep, because, as they say, better safe than sorry. So I don't want to pinpoint.
We knew about this in January.
I heard November.
We didn't know exactly in November because the World Health Organization was saying, oh, it's not transmitted human to human, and they kept doing that. And when we did know it in January, we closed any travel from China to the United States in the end of January. And I thought that was appropriate, yet a lot of people didn't think that.
No, there's always going to be people who agree or disagree on any decision. That's true.
I agree. Oh yeah, no, I thought that was the appropriate thing, was to stop the travel.
And then,
but it didn't seem to make any difference, because we have over 27,000 people dead in our country.
Yes, we do.
I don't know what the numbers are today, but that's 27,000 people that didn't need to die.
no, I totally agree. And I think the most important thing is that we learn from this. We have to learn from this, and then and I think ordinary Americans have to look at this and say, okay, this does require me to change my habits. Maybe not full, indefinitely, but just temporarily for the sake of myself and those around me. But I think some people, like we mentioned, are more readily able to do that, but others aren't. And then misinformation or not getting all the information or all the facts, that really causes this to be worse than it is, because people are all going to base their decisions and judgments from what they know and then what they don't know, and then misinformation. You mix all together, it can create a lot of turmoil, as we're seeing now with protests, with one side accusing the other, vice versa. And it's really sad, because at the end of the day, we just need to say, okay, we're in a crisis right now. Let's not cut each other's throats. Let's work together.
Well, I was at Whole Foods last weekend, right? And we are in line. We're all taking our turns. And the woman gets up to the counter and goes off on the guy behind the counter because he didn't have beef tenderloin. I mean, it's like, lady, okay, they don't have beef tenderloin, but we are in the midst of a crisis. And she pulls her mask off her face, and she starts screaming, not screaming, but just starts getting really irate with the guy behind the counter. And it's like, I'm sorry if you're not going to have your beef tenderloin for your Easter dinner, but grab a ham. I mean, we're in the middle of a crisis here, and it's not the man behind the counter's fault. It's not the man behind the counter. It's not his fault.
No, of course not. And I think that really does show, a lot of people's mentalities or their thoughts behind this. They, I think, in her case, I think that she thinks it's affecting her life, but she's not thinking on a bigger scale. And I think that's a problem with a lot of people. They don't think, on the bigger scale.
Worried about toilet paper.
Well,
yeah.
I think she was having an Easter gathering, it sounded like. Why are you having an Easter gathering? No, you shouldn't be having people over to your house. You shouldn't have anybody to your home. I mean, did we have Easter dinner? No.
Could have.
No, we weren't. We're smart. We realized that we should not have a family gathering, that to keep our families safe and sound, we have to keep our distance. As much as it stinks.
No, it really does stink.
Back there, I could have ate upstairs. You could have been in the front bedroom.
I was listening to one show, or it was either on public radio or it was public television, and they were saying you should treat this when you go out like you already have it, and you need to protect the public against you.
Yeah.
Be considerate of other people. You are not the only damn person on the planet.
No, you're not allowed to cuss in this podcast. I'm smart.
It's like
Nobody else is cussing. You're the only one cussing.
It's like the narcissism in people is this is shining. I mean, it's like it's not about you as a person. It's about the other person. I mean, you need to be socially responsible and respect people.
Well,
and I don't feel like that's happening.
Well, that's because everybody's an individual, and they're going to make up their own mind what they feel they want to do, whether it's right or wrong. It's just like we have laws, and are they followed by everybody? No, absolutely not. People break into houses, shoot people. We still have murders going on around here, so it doesn't. It's not like it deters anything.
And have you noticed that on the news? That they're not. How you're in St. Louis?
Oh, I know. You're right.
You may be hearing about a onesie, twosie a night when you know darn good well there's more going on, but they have been this
But the news did say the other day that crime is down. It's still happening, but it's down. And what is happening more is domestic violence.
Oh, yeah, because, that's the scary thing.
And that's a very good point you bring up because, there was a study that was done in China. Since this began and their quarantine began, the divorce rates in China have shot up. I don't have the specific numbers, but I know the divorce rate has shot up in this year.
I didn't realize that divorce was a big thing in China.
It's not as big as in the U.S. I mean, a lot of people, you can debate this all day, but the divorce rate has shot up in China since the quarantine started. So that does indicate an interesting trend there, and I also think that will also be mirrored here in the U.S. to an extent because people, couples, for an example, they could be spending more time than they normally do, and who knows what that will cause or generate. I mean, hypothetically speaking.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're constantly in each other's space.
Right. I wanted to know, I thought it was interesting, the uptick on the sale of guns since this started.
And alcohol, by the way. Alcohol sales have skyrocketed.
Alcohol. Yeah, they're saying that, the market's down on so many products, but not on the manufacturers of weapons, especially handguns.
Well, I think people were afraid that this was going to become, there was going to be total anarchy, people fighting over toilet paper. I really thought they thought it was going to be anarchy, that people were going to head to the streets and start rioting and fighting and fight over food and other goods.
You know what, Wendy, though, there are days when I think I have to stop thinking along those lines because it could go that way. If this got really horrible, it could happen.
Yeah, I think we're seeing. The fabric of society has been strained, but it's not snapped. I mean, if this was something like Ebola or something where it was like wiping out places left and right, that would be, I think, a precursor for that. But I don't think we've got to that point yet, and I hope to God we don't.
I don't think we've gotten to that point at all. But if things really go south, I'm frightened about what could happen.
I know
it's just scared all the time.
I know we've had protests, but that's in Michigan, and that was over that. But after being out in the grocery shops and going out, a lot of people are taking this very well. I would say the majority of people have gloves on, have masks on, and they are respecting the social distance. And even if you're walking up to a counter, like those the frozen food section at the grocery store. What is he putting up over my head?
God bless America.
What does it say?
I'm not repeating it.
Yeah. Well, you guys, you never cease to amaze to make a podcast that much more interesting. I will say that.
Oh, God help us.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. So we're wrapping up on time here. So, So I would say before we sign off, is there any ideas, thoughts, or suggestions you have, that you think would be good to help resolve this, or help people get through this period of time? Besides what you've already said,
just be respectful of your fellow citizen. Just if you don't respect the other guy, then it's just all going to fall apart.
I completely agree. And Wendy?
I agree with Mom. You do need to be respectful. And, if nothing, take care of yourself and your family. If you don't care about anybody else, and you don't, and a lot of people don't care about anybody else, care about you and your family. And just try to be respectful of other people. I know it's not going to happen. You're going to have your Do not put that Trump for president thing over my head again. He just tries to put that Trump.
And Uncle Doug, what about you? Any thoughts or ideas for, people that you think would help?
You need to put an E on that, Mom. That's me. That's me.
Oh,
No, that's you.
that's me. You over here.
Dear God, children, what are you doing over there?
Alrighty, guys, let's keep this a little more formal now. Come on now. So, Uncle Doug, like I said, was there any thoughts or ideas that you think people should do to, help them get through this?
Sit down.
I will be more than glad to share my summary with you. My summary is this. Nobody was prepared for what we have going on right now. And I agree we have to be socially responsible for what we do moving forward. However, we should not be afraid to continue our lives. Let's put it that way. Our lives are good. We live in the brightest, the best country in the world. And we will get through it together.
That was a quote from Trump.
Put that man up for election, by golly.
Jesus.
Trump for president.
Alrighty, guys, we're getting a little too political here. So, but I think we've all had a pretty good, explanation and discussion of this.
Mom,
So.
you need to put an E on that.
Yeah. So,
No.
Did you see that? Did you? Let me just close with this. Did you see
No,
the information that came out about when Obama backed up Joe Biden for president? Obama said to Joe, "Hey, I'm backing you up for president," and Joe Biden says, "For what?"
You funny.
all right. Let's not get too political on this. This is not a political podcast, guys.
Yeah, because
So,
the orange boy,
yeah.
he's a nut.
So anyway, do you guys have any final thoughts or suggestions that you think people should know about, or as us as a family, we've been very lucky through this, and we've been, I think, pretty proactive and smart in our approach to dealing with this. But I know that's not always going to be the same across every family or across the world right now.
No, because your cousin, Kelly, she's a hairdresser. She does not get to work, and she has 3 kids. I don't know if my brother and my sister-in-law weren't helping her, where would Kelly be with those children?
No, you're right.
Because, unemployment, and I don't even know if Kelly is going to get unemployment, because I think she's an independent contractor at the salon that she was working.
Oh, no, she can. They passed a law saying that she can get unemployment. It's already been there.
I hope it's enough to keep her and her family going.
She did say that she filed her taxes super early and she had gotten her tax return, and she said if it wouldn't have been for the tax return, she doesn't know what she'd be doing.
And I'm going to be, I hate to be negative and real bad about this, but to raise 3 kids, she needs to be more than just a hairdresser. I'm sorry. But that's the truth.
Well, I don't think she got...
Oh.
I don't think her... Okay.
So anyway, we all have points of opinion on that and many other things, but we're running out of time for today. So, I just wanted to thank you all for, joining me on this podcast. And, we definitely had some interesting discussions. And, family, it's always fun to see what they think and their personal opinions.
Mom.
Always colors the room a little brighter, as they say. So, we'll be making more podcasts soon. And I just think right now, given the focus on COVID-19 or coronavirus, we don't want to focus too much on it, but we do need to focus on it. And this is not just an international issue, but it's a personal issue, family issue, community issue, city issue, all the way out, to the global community. So that's why I think it's important we discuss this and, delve into it in further depth. So I just want to thank you all for being on the podcast today, and hope to have everyone in the family back on it and have more people. And, without further ado, if you have any last things to say to the audience, you can say what you want to say.
I hope everybody stays safe.
Me too. And I love you both.
And with Wendy being a chaplain now, she should give us a blessing.
I am not going to give you a blessing because I'm not officially the DAR chaplain. So.
Alrighty. You guys are great. So.
God
Thank
bless
you, Sean.
everybody.
Thank you.
So this is International Immersion signing off. Please leave us comments, suggestions, thoughts, or more topics you want us to discuss, and we'll see you on the next one.